Today, inflation jumping to its highest level in nearly 40 years. We ask if there's anything the Federal Reserve can do to fix it. And the state of New York announcing an indoor mask mandate. It's in response to the new Omicron variant. How much will businesses be fined if they don't comply? And Meta takes another step into the metaverse. Its virtual reality platform Horizon World is now available for download. That and much more coming up on NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. Consumer prices in the United States have jumped to their highest levels in nearly 40 years. Labor Department says consumer price inflation rose by 6.8% in the year through November. That's a level not seen since June 1982. The report says gas prices soared more than 58%, the biggest hike since 1980. Groceries cost 6.4% more, the largest increase since 2008. But despite higher prices, U.S. consumer sentiment rose unexpectedly in early December, well, among lower-income households at least. Readings for both current conditions and future expectations improving, but sentiment slipped further for the middle and upper thirds. So joining us is Lance Roberts, Chief Strategist at RIA Advisors. Lance helps manage over $1 billion in assets with RIA. Lance, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Always a pleasure.
Lance, we see inflation, CPI at least, at 40-year high. At the same time, there's rumors the Fed, the agency in charge of price stability, right? Rumors that they'll start to tighten monetary policy even faster. What do you think the impact will be given the supply chain problems and the labor shortages as well that people say are also contributing to the price increases?
Well, so first of all, a couple of things. One is when you take a look at the way CPI is calculated, it's a very high level, 6.9% annualized, highest level we've seen in 20, 30 years. You know, and that's certainly a concerning thing. However, what most people forget is things like healthcare, rent payments, mortgage payments. Those things are all fixed, right? We have a rental payment or a mortgage payment that's fixed for a period of time. Our healthcare costs are locked in for a period of time. So if we extract those things out, because they're not inflating for you and me, right? But our food costs are going up, our gasoline costs are going up. That inflation rate is almost 10%. So you can kind of understand why consumer confidence has been so weak, particularly in these last few reports, because the average American is feeling this because real wages aren't keeping up with either CPI the way it's reported, and particularly not the real cost of living once you look at it from what consumers spend money on every week.
And will Americans get respite if the Fed starts to tighten? You think it's going to change things?
Well, yeah, but not for the better. I mean, if we go back in history and look at, the Federal Reserve's, the kind of monetary interventions, it's never worked out well, right? So in the initial stages, the Federal Reserve starts tightening rates, and in the initial phases of a quarter point, half point, yeah, you don't see much impact to the economy. However, you go back to 1980, every single time the Federal Reserve has started a rate hiking campaign, it's resulted in either a market crash, a recession, or some type of crisis. And it's not, the question is not, will their interest rate hikes eventually do this? The question is only when. And the problem is we don't know at what level that is. So is it 2% interest rates? Is it 3? Is it 4? What we do know, though, is going back to 1980, every single peak in interest rate hikes has been at a lower level than the previous. So hiking rates this time will likely trigger an economic fallout, sooner than we did back in 2018 when we were hiking rates then.
And then does that mean we're kind of stuck in a permanent inflationary environment as well, assuming that the Federal Reserve and even the government step in with stimulus policies, which I think a lot of people agree have been inflationary over the past 18 months?
Yeah. Well, again, we're into this, boom bust cycle that we've been doing really since about 1980. Really kind of showed its case in 2000, and then, of course, after the financial crisis, and then particularly after the pandemic. We keep coming up with these new measures to inject liquidity into the economy. Yes, it is inflationary, but longer term, it's still demographics. It's still the impact of what's happening with the bottom 90% of consumers. which is deflationary in nature. So we may have these inflationary pops, but those are eventually going to give way to deflation because that's the overall drag that we have in economic growth.
A lot to look forward to. Lance Roberts, RIA Advisors, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
With higher prices also comes higher rent. The New York City rental market is making a major comeback with rents increasing at the fastest pace in the last decade. NTD's Phil Zhou has the details.
The median rent for Manhattan rose 17% year over year in November. And for the entire New York City, even higher at 23%.
The highest year-over-year increase we've tracked in at least a decade.
That's after rents dropped to record lows last year during the CCP virus pandemic, when the median Manhattan rent sunk to under $3,000. Now it's rebounded to around $3,500. But property appraiser Jonathan Miller says it's the most divided market he's ever seen in 35 years.
Lower wage earners saw much more pain economically than mid or upper tier salary types, where the upper half of the market is significantly outperforming the lower half.
He says some rents in the lower half of the market are still more than 10% below pre-pandemic levels. While rents are coming back, offices are still 65% empty. Miller warns that the city may not return to exactly the way it was before.
It's not going to revert back to pre-pandemic form. It's going to be something different, and that's what we're trying to figure out right now.
Phil Zhou, NTD News.
So with the price of used cars up again 2.5% in November, we're joined by Kayla Reynolds, Manager of Economic and Industry Insights for Cox Automotive. Kayla, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's great to be here.
Kayla, we saw back in August and September the price of used cars had started to come down. But again, over this month and the previous month, November and October, we see them rising again. Why is that?
So especially on the retail side, we did see a kind of plateau regarding the prices that consumers were seeing at the dealership. But on the wholesale side, that's where dealers were seeing much and historically high price increases. We had a 15-week streak on our model year 2018 vehicles going through the auction place that was finally cut short 2 weeks ago, meaning that these dealers were paying enormous amount for these vehicles at the auction place, but at the retail space, they weren't able to even list those vehicles, thus in turn cutting their profit margin to very, very small levels.
We see prices for used up over 30% over the past 12 months. Has this discouraged Americans from buying?
What we saw in the beginning of this year was definitely that a lot of consumers had pent-up demand from a lot of the shutdowns and lockdowns from last year. So we saw really a spring bounce in a lot of the sales on the new and the used side for vehicles. But going into the tail end of this year, we've definitely seen that the consumers that needed to purchase those vehicles, they did that earlier this year. And going into the end of this year, a lot of the consumers that are in the market currently are not at a need to have basis, but a want to have basis regarding purchasing those vehicles. So some of them may be actually making the decisions that they may hold off. But, you know, here at Cox Automotive, we do say that consumers, they can use their resources and be able to find some good deals in the market still if they have to.
And so I think last word, where do you see prices going, let's say, over the next 6 to 12 months?
So over the next year, especially, we're hoping that wholesale prices, especially for dealers, somewhat stabilizes, but definitely we're not going to see a real decrease that quickly. We've hit a historical high on the wholesale side, and we're hoping that we've already hit that high and we're at the peak now, and moving into next year, that will more than likely decrease marginally. But on the new side, we continue to see that new prices continue to increase, where we've seen average transaction price above $40,000. Once these new manufacturers are able to push these vehicles out and up their inventory, we're hoping that they'll be able to increase upon their mix and make these vehicles much more affordable for consumers.
We'll see the used prices come down. Great. Kayla Reynolds, Cox Automotive, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
A New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced a statewide mask mandate today amid fears of the new Omicron variant. Residents will have to wear masks indoors for all public businesses and venues. That's unless proof of vaccination is already required. Businesses that don't comply will be subject to a maximum $1,000 fine for each violation. It's unknown whether the Omicron variant causes more severe illness or is more transmissible than other variants. The CDC says masks offer protection, but a recent analysis found that cloth masks are of little use against the CCP virus. The new mandate goes into effect Monday until mid-January, when the state will revisit the policy. And Amtrak says it may have to reduce its service next year, due in part to vaccine mandates. Its president told a House committee that Amtrak will not have enough employees to run all of its trains before the vaccine mandate takes effect January 4th. He noted many engineers, conductors, and other workers either retired or left the company during the pandemic. Then Amtrak has halted hiring due to the uncertainty around pandemic restrictions. The company is expected to update its service routes soon. And from a worker shortage to a plane shortage, American Airlines plans to drop several international destinations next year because it's still waiting on around a dozen 787 aircraft from Boeing. They were supposed to be in the fleet by this winter, but deliveries of the Dreamliners have mostly been suspended after manufacturing flaws were detected. American says that without the planes, it won't be able to fly as often as planned next summer. So if you're planning to fly to Hong Kong, Prague, or Berlin this summer, you probably can't do that with American. Boeing expects to start up deliveries again by next April. And from the air to the ground, transportation and supply chain problems are hurting farmers across the U.S. West Coast. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
These shrink-wrapped boxes of fresh California walnuts are stacked up almost to the ceiling in Don Barton's California packing facility. They should be heading to Europe for holiday baking and to Asia for New Year's celebrations.
Walnuts are considered a culinary nut primarily, not as opposed to being a snacking nut. And so, yeah, the peak demand comes around the Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year holidays.
Instead, about $10 million worth of nuts are stuck at his processing plant 70 miles south of Sacramento, thousands of miles from their destinations, as the global supply chain crisis squeezes ports. Ships that would normally pick up these walnuts are skipping the port of Oakland, or showing up at odd or unexpected times that make it difficult to get the product to the docks.
California is not the largest producer in the world. In the case of walnuts, we produce about 30% of the world's supply. So we have foreign competition in China, we have competition from Chile, we have competition from Eastern European countries.
Much of the shipping crunch is due to the pandemic. The demand for imports overwhelmed supply chains and prompted container shipping lines to focus on the most profitable routes between China and the Port of Los Angeles, skipping others.
What we're seeing is that because of the congestion that's been happening at ports, in particular in Southern California, that has delayed vessels and they're off schedule. As a result, ocean carriers are deciding, rather than coming up the coast to Oakland, California, to skip us.
California's walnut industry exported 47% fewer nuts in the shell and 16% fewer shelled nuts during September and October of 2021 than it did in the previous year, according to a California Walnut Board report. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And an update on the president's Build Back Better social spending plan. Today, the Congressional Budget Office came out with a new estimate on how much it's going to cost if passed. It says if some programs are extended to 2031 instead of lasting just a few years as proposed, it would increase the federal deficit by $3 trillion over the next 10 years. Here's Republican Senator Lindsey Graham.
If you believe these programs go away after 1, 2, or 3 years, you shouldn't have a driver's license. Ronald Reagan said the closest thing to immortality on earth is a government program.
Republicans requested the new estimate because they say Democrats will try to extend the programs. But Democrats, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, blasted the report, saying it's fake, because they argue if any of the extensions of the programs would be fully offset. The price tag of the current bill is around $1.8 trillion, and some of the provisions, like enhanced child tax credit, expires after just 1 year. And the Senate passed a bill last night targeting the national debt. It follows debate and predictions the U.S. could soon reach its debt limit. By a final vote of 59 to 35, the bill establishes a fast-track process that allowed Democrats to raise the federal debt limit on their own. It comes just ahead of the December 15th government default deadline. Next, the bill goes to President Biden's desk for his signature, and with that, Senate Democrats will be able to increase the debt limit on their own with a simple majority of 51 votes. 14 Senate Republicans broke a filibuster to advance the debt limit process yesterday, breaking weeks of partisan deadlock on the issue. And despite high inflation, Wall Street rose on Friday. The S&P 500 notched an all-time closing high. The Dow rose 216 points, about 0.6%. S&P 500 gained 45 points, about 1%. And the Nasdaq gained 113 points, about 0.7% today. And Meta, formerly known as Facebook, is launching a limited trial of its digital wallet. It's called Novi. The wallet will be part of WhatsApp, and some will be able to transact with a stable coin named the US Pax Dollar, or USDP. Stable coins are a type of cryptocurrency that have their value pegged to another asset. For example, one USDP stablecoin is worth $1. Meta says the USDP has been operating successfully for over 3 years and has important regulatory and consumer protections. Meta aims to help people who can't use traditional global financial systems. Right now, the feature is only available to WhatsApp users in Guatemala and the United States. And Meta is making news for another reason, too. Its virtual reality platform, Horizon Worlds, is now open to all adults in the United States and Canada. Before, you could only access it through invitation only. NTD's Faye Quarter has more.
Welcome to a place of limitless possibilities.
Horizon Worlds, Meta's new virtual reality social platform, is now open to anyone over 18 in the U.S. and Canada. In it, you can
Forge new experiences
in a community of legless, floating avatars where you can explore, play, and create.
When you go into a place like Horizon Worlds, you can go left, you can go right, you can go up, you can go down, you can go, play tag, you can go play a social game, a competitive game, or a cooperative game. You can go and just hang out by the grass in some exotic world. It really is up to you.
The CEO of brain training startup VirtuLeap says the game has no monetization system yet.
Woo! Wee! This is awesome.
But that potential future advertisements likely won't have the intrusive nature of pop-up ads.
Woo! Did I do it?
You can create seamless brand experiences. So, for example, you go into a virtual room in Horizon Worlds and a Coca-Cola can is there.
John Pavlik is a professor of media studies at Rutgers University. Pavlik says the platform is currently free, probably because Meta wants to collect data on people's experiences before turning to revenue.
I would guess that they want to create a lot of user-generated content and experience, get millions of people or even, hundreds of millions eventually on this platform. And then they may be able to generate revenue indirectly from that in some fashion.
Horizon Worlds is available on the Oculus Quest headset. Meta acquired the company for $2 billion in 2014.
So, bring your vision.
The Quest has failed to go beyond a niche audience, but Facebook is betting on virtual reality anyway. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
With that, we're going to take a quick break, but still to come this evening. An airline association ranks the best airlines based on passenger experience. Which ones made the list? And a rare Harry Potter book sells for an out-of-this-world price. Auctioneers say it set a world record. That and more coming up on NTD Business.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. Before all this started, I had already written in my memoir, I dedicate this book to anyone that's looking for hope. Well, right now, we're all looking for hope. I believe that my story is going to bring inspiration and hope to everyone. By the time you're done reading my book, you will believe that with God, all things are possible. To thank you all for your support, I'm offering some of my best prices ever on MyPillow products, including this exclusive bundle. You get my book and these 5 MyPillows. They all have beautiful scenes and verses from the Bible, such as Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. This 6-pack bundle is regularly $219. Now it's just $99.98 and free shipping with your promo code. Go to mypillow.com and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below. Thank you and God bless.
You are not just watching a performance. You are witnessing a culture reborn. Now, you'll see what the modern world has never seen. China, before communism. Shenyun 2021, live on stage. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
Welcome back. The best-selling car in America is coming out with an all-electric version. And it's in such high demand, the waiting list is already over 3 years long. The Ford F-150 Lightning is the electric version of the popular selling truck. It's debuting next spring, but all 150 units being released by 2024 are already accounted for. Ford says they already received 200,000 reservations, so many that Ford stopped taking reservations online. Worth noting, the reservations only cost $100 and are refundable. And last August, a Portland, Oregon resident made a startling discovery. Tesla drivers can play a video game on their car's touchscreen dashboard while the vehicle is moving. NTD's Andrew Thomas has a story.
Curious to see for himself, Vince Patton drove his own 2021 Tesla Model 3 to an empty community college parking lot and activated a game called Skyforce Reloaded from a menu and did a few loops.
So this is the warning you get when you put the car in drive. Use of Tesla Arcade while the vehicle is in motion is only for passengers. Please check local laws prior to playing. So you must say I'm a passenger, and I am only lying because I'm in a closed parking lot. I would never do this on the street.
Patton tried Solitaire too, and was able to activate that game while driving. Later, he found he could browse the internet while his car was moving. Patton loves his car and says he has nothing against Tesla, but he worries that drivers will play games and become dangerously distracted. Early last month, Patton decided to file a complaint with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA.
There's really no way to reach out to them. So I filed a complaint with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I admire Tesla. I think it's very important not to pollute the planet. It's a very good car, but this feature does not belong in this car. It is dangerous.
The NHTSA's inquiry marks the latest in a growing list of possible safety issues involving advanced auto technology. The government is looking into Tesla's autopilot partially automated driving system, as well as its full self-driving software system. In its statement, the NHTSA said that it continues to research driving distractions, and that it's issued voluntary guidelines for automakers to determine whether a particular task interferes with driver attention. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And if you're booking a getaway on Southwest Airlines, you could see a new fare option next year. The Airline announced it's adding a fourth fare choice to its lineup. Currently, it has Business Select, Anytime, and Want to Get Away fares. Each have different benefits, with the third option being the cheapest. But the airline didn't share the name of its new fare or its benefits. They say it will be above their current lowest price option and will be available to all customers. Southwest expects to launch the new fare in mid-2022. And the Airlines Passenger Experience Association released its list of world-class airlines of 2022. Middle Eastern airlines made up a big chunk of the list. NTD's Evelyn Lee has more.
Planning your next trip abroad? The Airline Passenger Experience Association, or APEX, just named its top 7 world-class airlines for 2022. But what sets them apart?
What sets them apart is potentially the friendliness of their staff, the look and feel of their cabins, probably the service for food quality. I think when you travel a lot, as I have, millions of air miles, I think that one of the other things that really makes a difference for you is the staff.
On the list are Emirates, Japan Airlines, KLM, Qatar, Saudia, Singapore Airlines, and Turkish Airlines. APEX collected a year of passenger surveys and combined it with professional audits to choose the winners. And the award focuses heavily on customer experience. Canali says a big part of that is making a human connection with passengers.
And maybe they even give you a tip about where to go for a restaurant, for example, or they like a certain hotel or something like that. And so there's just those little connections.
Qatar Airways didn't just make the APEX list, but it also took the #1 spot on Skytrax ratings, a firm recognized to provide global benchmarks for airline standards. But to optimize the personal experience, Canali says she likes to look at the reviews to see what suits her purpose best. She says as a business traveler, for instance, on-time percentages are more important. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
And a first edition of Harry Potter sold for over $471,000 yesterday. Auctioneers say it's a world record price for a 20th century work of fiction. It's a hardback 1997 British edition of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, with color and illustration on the cover. Heritage Auction says the book's condition is very near pristine, and only 500 copies with this specific binding were printed. The book was sold by an American collector, but the name of the buyer wasn't released. J.K. Rowling went on to write 6 more books about the adventures of the orphan boy wizard, selling 500 million copies worldwide in 80 languages. That's the latest business updates for today, but you can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, it's all for this week. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.
NTD.com and sign up. It's free.